Welcome to the Talkies Short Film Roundup Edition. It's that time of the week again, everybody. Short Film Roundup.
Short Film Roundup.
Short Film Roundup.
Do you want to throw out that disclaimer real quick?
Disclaimer.
The disclaimer. If you are injured while watching Short Film Roundup.
Emotionally injured.
If you or your friends.
Emotionally injured. Yeah, you might be emotionally injured. It's true. Thank you for submitting short films to us. We are no holds barred. We take this hardcore.
We don't bar any of our holds.
Yep.
No, yeah, we go way in depth.
Everything's on the table.
Yeah, way in depth, probably too far in depth, but we go there anyway. And we're giving honest critique. We're going to be just as honest as we possibly can.
We will heap praise when the heaping is necessary, and we will be brutally cruel when you deserve it.
We've made every single mistake we've ever talked about here by ourselves.
Yes. So if it appears that we're laughing at you, we are also laughing at ourselves.
Yes, yeah.
And at you.
But at you too. Mostly at you.
Also, if you do have a short film that you want to submit, you can go ahead and do that at our subreddit, r/Carmenline Studios. Link is in the description. We take anything. We'll take it all.
Take it all.
Well, it should be a short film.
As long as it's a short film.
Under 30 minutes.
Narrative short film.
Yeah. Please don't give us any 20-minute. All right.
20 minutes to work.
Fine.
30-minute max.
30-minute max.
Yeah. All right.
An hour, 59 minutes. All
right. Let's dig right in. D, where are we starting today?
We're going to start with Time Loop. This is by, I'm going to butcher the name, Akshay Rathi.
Nailed it.
Akshay Rathi.
That's actually perfect.
Yeah?
Yep, completely perfect.
Okay.
We butcher everyone's name here.
I'm sorry.
Sorry. Check it out. Link below.
Roll Theater.
And we're back.
Wow. Man, that's a dark theater.
Yeah.
Well, yes.
It's a good theater.
It's a virtual theater.
So let's start with Time Loop. Mr. Ballantyne.
Ooh, all right.
What'd you think of Time Loop?
Well, so to start on the positive side, this film generally looked very nice.
Yeah,
you can tell he was using a good camera. It was well lit, and that he had a pretty good idea of how to use this thing.
Yeah.
Some of the framing and shot choices were a little weird, and I'm not sure really helped the pacing. But really, my biggest problem was that it took too long for me to sort of organically figure out what was going on. If it didn't have the title of Time Loop, that might have even been a little worse. And by the time sort of the twist came at the end, it was one of those moments where it was like, oh, I see what you're trying to do.
Right.
And less of me going with you and feeling that whole experience with you, which I think really could have been trimmed up by just faster paced editing.
I think faster pace would have done it. I was on par with it to about the third time that we saw the scene go through, and it kind of felt that way. Felt bad for me, like good for you, bad for me, because I've been in that situation before where I've had a dream within a dream within a dream, and it feels almost torturous. And just think that there's a movie.
You've actually had that happen?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I've had some pretty.
I thought that was just a movie cliche.
Right? No, but the feeling like I was there with it in the third, like I said, third time that we showed the scene, but after that, then it got a little more.
The police are coming. Sorry, I was distracted.
After that, it got a little more movie-ish, and it started to kind of show off things and kind of took me out of the story.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you guys. I definitely thought this was a pretty good looking movie for the most part. The cinematography I thought was pretty well done for the majority of the film. There are a few shots in there that seemed sort of unnecessary or sort of pointless. Fire truck.
They found us.
But I have this irrational pet peeve of both waking up in films and time loops in films, and usually they go together. And so this was that. And for a movie that is that kind of thing, it was relatively well executed. I think they could have done when that demon appears. I think it came out of nowhere. Like, it was never alluded to or anything.
Not before or after.
Yeah. So what I think could have made it stronger and a more engaging film, because I got kind of bored watching the same thing over and over again. It felt like it wasn't going anywhere. It just felt really repetitive. Hence, it's a time loop. But usually in a time loop, you're doing things differently or something slightly different. But in this case, like the second time loop, the only thing that's different is the doors open in the bathroom. But like, I felt like it would have been cool if we could have seen like maybe a point of view looming shot of this demon.
To add to that, the concept, not that cliche is necessarily a bad thing. There are still great movies that come out every year that are completely based on cliche. But the very concept of time loops, very cliche. The concept of discovering your surroundings via waking up, very cliche. A montage sequence of going from waking up to brushing your teeth to showering, very cliche. The one line that is spoken in here, "What do you want from me?" is very cliche. The one thing that was really original in this film was that specter that appeared out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And was really interesting. That was the most interesting thing in this film, and we just got a little bit of it.
Right.
Yeah. I wish we had more of that.
Yeah.
And see, what was kind of cool about that is it was a definitive reason as to why this is happening to this guy. Whereas like in Groundhog's Day, it's not even explained, which is fine.
So
but,
like in Groundhog Day, it's about his journey there.
Yeah.
And this is, like you said, because it's cliche, we kind of already have seen this journey before. What's different about this journey? Well, now we have this demon.
Yeah.
And
it's a torture thing.
Yeah. Shh.
Ooh, embarrassing.
Jeez. Yeah. I want to make a comment about the cinematography. The cinematography was there were some shots in here, like 2 or 3 shots that I just absolutely loved. And I'm a cinematographer, and I love looking at like really, really good images. I feel like they were by accident. I'm not sure why. Maybe it's because all of the other shots felt, like you said, the blocking was a little weird, or the framing was a little weird. A lot of the motivation was, I felt like, was broken in like setting up the shot a certain way. Like, for example, you were talking about how we had a shot where we have a foreground element and then he's running in the background, which I thought could have worked really well if we had built up to it. And it was, by this time, it was the 3rd time that it happened, and I'm just like, okay, well, we didn't really build up anything in his character, so we didn't really feel anything building up inside of us. We just kind of see the same thing going on. And really, I mean, filmmaking is about empathy, and if you can't get your emotion into the audience, then they're gonna feel disconnected.
Building onto that same point with the cinematography, one lesson that took me a very long time to really understand is that the camera, the shot you choose, will always convey your intent.
Right.
Your intent always shows through your shot choice, whether you want it to or not. And that also means that your lack of intent will show up
as intent
through your as intent.
Right.
Right.
And
I feel like,
sorry, can we break that down just real quick, just so people understand what we're talking about?
Sure.
So if you are trying to make, say, you're trying to do a center frame. Say I'm trying to shoot Taylor and I have a center frame, and I accidentally bumped the camera and found out later in editing that it's a little bit to the left. I might think it's no big deal, but once you put that into the story, now that's canon. Now that's locked. Now
Yep.
people look at it and they say, "Oh, okay, he was intending to have it this way." They don't say that in their mind, but that's what they're thinking. So any mistake that you have is not a mistake in the audience's eyes.
And that's why there's a real danger, especially with new filmmakers are guilty of this the most, but I still see it in big budget Hollywood films,
Yeah.
where you choose a shot simply because it's interesting or simply because you thought it would look cool, not because you have a very clear intent for why that shot should be in your story.
Right.
An example of that is what appeared to be a POV of his mouth in the toothbrush sequence, where you had his, like, the camera was almost behind the toothbrush and you saw the hand sort of coming in and out like this, and it was like a weird shot, but
Yeah.
very creative.
Yeah, really creative.
And
yeah.
in the right context, it would have been cool to have this very creative shot. If I had a story about why I'm inside someone's mouth, maybe, I don't
Right.
know. But in this context, it just was totally distracting. It didn't move us along anywhere. It was just interesting.
Yeah, when I had I was making a shot list for a kind of a horror movie that was kind of like that, where the shot that I was intending was from an inanimate object. So it was from this guy cooking eggs, and I wanted I had a shot from the eggs' point of view, looking up at the guy. The reason why I had that, though, EPV. The reason why I had that, though, was for a reason. Like you said, he is looking at the eggs and he scrambles the eggs after thinking about having kids for the first time. He thinks about kids, looks at the eggs, and goes scramble, scramble, scramble. And so if you have a point of view from the eggs, now you're symbolizing life, and then when he does that, anyway, the point is that it has intent.
Right.
Right. It's not a mistaken intent.
Right.
I think this kind of movie should be like an assignment for like filmmakers, like, because I've seen this idea of time looping like a quadzillion times. So where it's like, I think it's almost a good thing to just do and try and execute it in a solid way.
Yeah.
It also made me think about going back to cliches and how it's like inherent, like it's the first thing you think of is usually a cliche, and I think it's always good to, like, if you're writing a script and you're just going through it in like your first draft, and if it's all the first stuff you're thinking of, to just throw it all out and start just
Be like the Buddhist monks.
move on. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
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 Well, like we said in our Pacific Rim episode, the cliches are usually the easiest, right?
Yeah.
And it's just because you think of it doesn't mean that it's the best, and that's totally fine. I mean, if this is like a practice, if this is, like you said, an assignment or something, get it out. That's cool. But if you can catch it in a written time, try to just get that version out, work on a different version, see what you can come up with.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the other thing. It's always good to finish a project, even if it is like the first draft that's not good.
Right.
It's important to finish that, to have a finality to it.
Right.
For one, just seeing a big picture of what you're trying to make and how you can improve upon it, and it also starts building a habit of finishing projects, which is just always good. It's super easy to just not finish films,
Totally.
I think there's one last topic that we need to discuss with Time Loop, and that is audio.
Oh yeah.
Now, we've had several short films come through. Almost all of the short films that have come through the short film roundups have had audio problems of one kind or another. And usually our main criticism is, come on, use a mic, and where necessary, do sound editing and do Foley and bring in ambient tones. Cover up make that sound good before you worry about making it look good. The
Right.
sound is paramount.
Exactly.
Now, in this instance, we have someone who put forth the effort to do so. We have ambient tones being used for fill. We have some Foley sound effects, but the levels were like all over the place.
They were all way too loud.
Yeah,
They're way too loud.
Yeah.
And so we ended up with the same intent question, right? So in the first two run-throughs of the loop, we hear what is supposed to be outside noises. Like it's
Birds
morning,
chirping.
we have birds chirping, there's a rooster crowing.
Yeah.
But the levels are so high that it made my subconscious start to look around for where's the open window, Are they going to pull back and do an exterior that shows that we're on a farm?
Right.
Does he have a aviary in his house or something? You
Right.
know? It felt like it was supposed to be part of the foreground, not the background.
If you can imagine doing sound mixing or sound design or any of the sound stuff as a shot, as a visual shot, you would think that each of your sounds are objects that you want to put inside your scene. And if you make them all bright and very saturated and very big objects, you're not going to be able to find out what the point of the scene is. But if you build it out, try to have, maybe one sound that you're trying to get across, and then build up layers of other sounds. And stuff like
Soundscape.
that. Exactly.
You want to design a soundscape.
There was a thing that we did just for our short stakeout where we were recording the guy's clothes moving. You can't hear it. You can't go into the film, play it, and go, oh yeah, that's the shirt. Like you can't, but it creates a soundscape. And when it's layered on top of ambient, when it's layered on top of footsteps and smoking and all that stuff that we had in that scene, it builds up a ground. It builds up an actual environment.
Yeah, it stops sounding like it stops being as if you're hearing it through a film, but more as if you're hearing it in person.
Right.
And that's kind of like the difference which is kind of cool about audio, is that a camera never looks completely photorealistic to what your eyes see, but audio gets extremely close to what you actually are hearing in your day-to-day waking life, not in a movie.
Right.
So getting that right can really elevate a film.
Well, and there's no what's the word, suspension of disbelief.
Yeah.
For hearing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, which is really cool.
Yeah.
I appreciate that you did any Foley at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
In the first place.
Yeah, high marks for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Cool.
Thank you again, and tell your friends. Check out Time Loop.
Yeah.
Next we have there we go. Next we have Baggage by Carson Bailey.
Carson Bailey's Baggage. Check it out. Link below.
Say Roll Theater.
Roll theater.
You look nice. What's the occasion? Hopefully a fancy interview for a big boy job. You're definitely going to need the extra cash if you plan on living alone. You know you can't just walk out on this one, right? This isn't just another one, this is the one. You two live together, remember?
You look really cute, Daniel. Is this the tie that I got you?
Back.
Cool.
Whoa.
So that was Baggage.
Yeah.
That was emotionally charged.
Mr. Taylor Schofield.
Hey.
Tell me about Baggage. Do you have baggage?
I got a little bit of baggage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are we figments of your imagination?
Pretty sure. I've actually come to that conclusion. Like,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
Are you solipsist so that this shot and that shot are actually showing nothing?
Yes. And what I do is
Guys,
I
can we get
CGI
to the movie?
Baggage. I really liked Baggage. I thought it was great, actually.
Yeah.
There was a lot that I liked about it. I liked the concept in the first place of seeing basically his, I guess it is a figment of his imagination, these apparitions of his ex-girlfriends and his relationships that he had with them kind of just being all together in one room and being like imposed on him. I really loved that concept and seeing that played out, and it was just like really well shot for the most part, really well edited, and the performances were all really good.
Really strong.
Yeah. And I think my favorite thing about this movie is it created a surreal atmosphere without having to rely on a bunch of like visual effects, like a hazy lens or stuff like that.
Right.
You know, like
That's probably my favorite thing about it too.
yeah, it's just a room of people, and that's all it is. but it still feels very surreal.
No,
because
blocking
of the-
was a big thing about
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
And I just I loved it for that.
Yeah.
It is a real challenge to direct that many people with that much dialogue
Absolutely.
and moving around as much as they did. So, first, the direction was fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
This was a well-directed film. I mean, it would have to be.
Yeah.
A movie like this just can't be pulled off without very good direction.
Yeah, there's definitely previs here.
Yeah.
You know.
On top of that, I would give just huge praise for being able to pull off a film with that much dialogue, just on top of each other and moving that quickly, and managing to still get really good performances out of everyone.
Yeah.
Um,
And on top of that, ADR.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
I could not have done that.
All right, so I'm still on the fence as to whether or not the entire film was ADR.
Yeah.
I'm
this
not
is
sure it
this is
was.
pretty cool.
I really would
This
like.
is really cool.
I'd like the makers of the film to let us know in the comments.
Yeah.
But when the first speaking character came into the shot and said her line, it was a little jarring because the sound mix wasn't quite right.
Yeah.
The ADR, that was definitely ADR and felt like ADR.
Right.
However, eventually my subconscious and my brain got used to the way they sounded. It didn't bother me, but later I was just really looking at the sync. I was looking at their mouths moving paired with the sound, and I'm like,
Right.
wait, oh, it is a no, it isn't a. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, they could have been mic'd
If that was
just very
all
closely.
ADR, that'd be kind of nuts.
So if it wasn't ADR, then they were
they have
were
a
marked.
proximity error.
Yeah, they were
issue.
marked very, very closely, or mic'd very, very closely.
Yeah, and in fact, the first person doesn't have to be ADR necessarily. Yeah, it could be just a proximity issue.
Yeah.
Which is just as big of a problem.
It is.
Because now you're making your characters
Yeah.
sound like they're not really in the room.
Right. So, I mean, so let's just get that obvious one part out of the way. Is that proximity is a big thing in film, and like we said before, sound is a huge thing. The part that didn't work so well with the proximity thing is that when your voice sounds like you're right here, you know, and you're actually way across the room, or if you're actually behind three other people that all sound the same, it starts to take you out of the movie. And honestly, I like the first thing I said when we stopped watching the movie is I was like, man, I really wanted to like this a lot more than I did, and it's because the sound kept taking me away, and I kept realizing that I was watching a movie, and I kept coming back out of the emotional part, you know, and I wanted to be emotionally connected.
Yeah, and those actresses especially were putting everything onto the screen. That was just really good emotional performances.
It was really good.
I felt the genuineness of their performance, to use a word correctly.
Yes.
Genuity. Sticking to it.
If you want to think about it differently, non-genuineness in that way would be ingenuity.
Ingenuity?
But ingenuity.
Oh, wait, but that word's taken.
Yeah.
Dang.
Let's see.
Cinematography, I loved because the lighting was exceptional.
The light was really nice in there.
Exceptional.
Yeah.
My favorite kind of lighting is short lighting, where you're shooting from the dark side of the person's face. I love every window shot that was in here, using daylight to its maximum potential. I love that.
So let's talk about the story a little bit. Because I too had sort of the same feeling where I was like, ooh, this is close to a masterpiece. You know, it's like we're on like the 1 yard line, and I just kind of want to
just
kind of, but it's just not quite there. You know, there's just and again, nitpicking. This film is a
It's a great film.
tremendous accomplishment.
It really is a great
Absolutely.
film.
and probably better than 80% of the films we've covered thus far here. In fact, I'd say that with some confidence. But to me, if I could pin down the problem, was that I didn't get enough character development to relate to who ultimately was the main character, which is Danny.
Yeah.
Now, one could make the argument that this is about the girls that Danny hurt, but I don't think that's the case. At first, that's where my empathy was flowing. We're hearing from these girls from his past who really weren't treated very well. and I began to build empathy for them. But then it became very clear these aren't those girls, right?
They're his versions of
yes,
things.
and they're saying what he needs to hear. They're coming from his subconscious to him,
Right.
meaning he's the center of the story. And when his emotional swell comes towards the end and he begins to break and have his own epiphany, I'm not there with him. I haven't come there with him because there wasn't any story, there wasn't any character development. We were so focused on these memories,
Yeah.
who are living around him, that we're not getting enough information on himself.
Right.
And so without that empathic bridge, I'm just not feeling it. I felt what the girls felt, but in the end, that's not where I should have been.
Yeah.
I should have been there with Danny, but I wasn't given enough to do that.
I got the impression that a lot of the character development for Danny was intended to be relayed through the dialogue of the girls.
Right,
Which,
who are a part of Danny.
right,
Right.
yeah. And so like they have a lot of dialogue where they're explaining all of his shortcomings and stuff like that. But like you said, it doesn't, it's just because they're talking about Danny doesn't necessarily make you like connect with Danny.
Yeah.
Because you're looking at them.
Because you're
at
looking
their
at them
faces.
and hearing them talk from their point of view, and even I think it got so extreme to the point where like Danny felt like a side character because he
did.
he
Well,
literally
and-
didn't even
and-
have much screen time.
And all that you get on him kind of makes you dislike him.
Yeah,
Right.
I'm not relating to him. I'm disliking him. He's coming across as sort of a douche. And then all of a sudden we have this, arc moment for him where I'm feeling like I should have empathy, but it's not there.
yeah. That being said, my favorite part of the movie was when Emily is breaking up with him.
Yep.
And I had a moment where it all clicked, where I was like, he's all messed up over Emily because for once he's being dumped
Yes.
rather than doing the dumping.
And
I
I-
liked that, that
Yeah,
little trajectory.
I put the whole thing together at that point too. I think that this film and the filmmaker are both very smart.
Yeah.
I think this is a very, very clever film and a genuinely unique idea, especially like we said, sort of revealing the character through these other characters.
Yeah.
I just wonder if maybe it was a little too clever.
I think maybe.
Well, I just think I just think it was just a little bit lopsided. Like,
Yeah.
Either, like, they could have gone two ways. They could have cut it down a bit and put a larger focus on Danny. Still have the characters relaying information about Danny like it is, but also throw in maybe a couple more scenes that show Danny's point of view and actually show Danny himself being a character.
Yeah.
And I think you could also cut out some of the dialogue too. Or you could even go farther and make it a longer film and put the same kind of more emphasis on Danny and flush him out a bit. I just felt that it was just like a bit lopsided.
For the climax of him being like arguing against the girls, where he shouts out at the very end, like for that kind of reveal, for that kind of climax, it wasn't built up the way it should have been. So like you said, we should have built his character more empathetically, but I feel like he could have, the director still could have, sorry, I'm talking too much and my head's not catching up. So we're seeing a lot of the character of Danny through the girl's point of view. If we had made the climactic moment of his whole issue with Emily, or his, I can't get the names down. Who's the girl that broke up with him?
Emily. That's
Emily.
right.
Okay. So that whole issue with him and Emily, I feel like could have worked if the girls talked about it instead of him revealing it. Right? If the whole thing was about Danny through the girls' eyes, then this whole thing could have worked if they just stuck to that. Then you wouldn't need Danny's character.
Oh, instead of shifting.
Right.
Instead of making Danny the main guy.
Right. Well, then it would be kind of like this third person voice where you're talking about a character and you never actually see from their point of view. It's just all about that character, all the things that happen around that character. And if they stuck with that voice, I think that would have been good. But they did switch, which means that you need to now build Danny up previously, and they didn't.
Right.
Yeah. So
that's pretty cool.
That did feel a bit weird.
I would have liked to see that.
Yeah.
That's such a really cool idea.
Or at the very least, maybe the Emily storyline brought in a little earlier.
Yeah.
Maybe even like opening scene sort of thing, where the start with the breakup, like a flashback or a memory or a dream or something like that. We get that perspective. I don't know. It felt like the film immediately quadrupled in strength once we got to that point.
Yeah.
Up to that point, it honestly it was getting to where I just started feeling like, come on, go somewhere.
Yeah, a little tired.
This is, I don't want to watch your relationship therapy.
I feel like it was written without a whole lot of previs. Like they had the story down on paper, but not necessarily translated to the screen very well. And you can kind of tell by all those shots. So like some of the shots were great, most of the shots were great, but some of the shots they had traveled. Like one shot that I'm thinking of is that they look at a girl while the camera's rotating around, and then they come behind the shoulder of Danny shooting to this girl OTS, and they're just sitting on it for like 35 seconds or so, and you're just like, what's happening here? Why are we here?
Yeah, and that's a good point, because I feel like they could have developed Danny more simply by making different camera choices.
Yeah.
Because the camera was telling us that Danny wasn't the central figure of the story.
He wasn't important.
That Danny wasn't important.
Yeah.
In fact, I remember feeling a little surprised when he finally spoke and we saw his eyes and his face, and it was like, oh, it's like he's aware of us in a way that I didn't think he was.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, and I feel like this could have been a play, probably better than a film. Which sucks because I really like the lighting here. I just don't think the cinematography was on point.
Yeah.
The shot choices. I think there's kind of a confusion when people talk about cinematography. When they say really good cinematography, usually what they mean is that the shots looked really cool. Mm-hmm. When there's good cinematography, what I would think is one that communicates the story, or at least the intent, really well. You can still have really good looking shots, really good lighting, good framing, good all the stuff that matters. But if you're not intending the shots to act as they did, then I don't think you have good cinematography.
Right, or if your shots don't move the story forward.
Exactly. Well, and they don't always have to, but if they're not matching your intent,
Yeah.
Pontificate complete.
I'm going to jump back real quick to ADR, and I noticed something extremely interesting. Well, I don't know if the whole film is ADR or not, but I know for a fact that the opening had to have been ADR.
Or proximity.
Yeah, just the proximity was off, and I think I saw some lip reading that was off.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But what I did notice, or if I'm completely wrong, you can just call me out on it. But if it is ADR, it was interesting because I can tell that the actress was she was voice acting.
Right. You're talking about in the opening?
Yeah, in the opening scene. She was using her voice to act.
Well, and you could tell it was cut in certain places.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's actually, I think you're right about the beginning.
That felt so much like a stage play.
Yeah.
That first part where the first actress comes in, the first girlfriend,
where she's narrating the
up.
exposition.
Yeah, it felt very much like a stage play.
Yeah.
And I was already starting to take notes about bad stagey dialogue.
Yeah.
But as soon as the second girlfriend showed up, it's like it just elevated to another level. They really pulled that up. That one resurrected that dead horse.
Right. Sorry, I cut you off.
Yeah, I just never. I never thought about ADR in that regard, where you could have ADR and you can have a performance and give a performance on camera, scrap all the dialogue, and then essentially be giving a whole new layer to the performance through your voice and having accentuating voice acting, which could be kind of cool if it's done in like a stylistic way even.
Like Danger Danger.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Link in the description.
But I think in this case it didn't I didn't feel like it was meant to be that way. And it really seemed like, because her voice was not matching her performance necessarily.
Yeah.
So I think that's maybe something to keep in mind for doing ADR. I feel like that's actually something that I just learned right then and there for if I'm ever doing ADR, is to get the performance to match what's on screen, unless intentionally otherwise.
You know what's really funny is I did this ADR session in school one time, and we were I was doing an ADR for a scene in Dodgeball, that movie.
Oh yeah.
And there was a time where the coach says, time is out, right? And he's screaming it. The shot is really, really wide, and he's yelling it. And so when we did ADR, the guy who was doing the voice for me said it as if he was distant. And he said, time is out. And it was hilarious watching this like really wide shot, and it's like this guy whispering. It just looks really, really weird.
That's really funny.
I'm going to make a prediction about this movie, and then you can tell me if I was right or wrong. But if I would guess that the makers of this film either was closely related to an acting school or theater group, or you put a tremendous amount of effort into casting. This was a movie that was, proficiently made and had a very clever story, but I do not think either of those would have carried it without the performances that this film had. Ultimately, that's what made this movie, were some really, really good performances.
They really
almost
were.
Across the board.
Yeah.
Like, just everyone was dialed in.
And
Many of whom struck me as definitely classically trained, if not all of them. So a lesson to learn from this one: just don't throw your cast together as a hodgepodge from people you know or your friend who wants to act.
Right.
Take the time and get super, super specific with your casting.
Absolutely.
And get involved with theater groups and with people who are trained.
Absolutely. I agree 100%.
Yes.
All right. Anything else to say?
Nope.
Let's move on.
All right.
Thank you for sharing baggage with us.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Glad to have your baggage.
What's next?
I don't want that baggage.
All right. Our third film for today is Corsican. Corsican.
Of course I can.
Corsican.
Directed by Christopher Baronis. Just says directed by. So, take a look at the film. Come right back. It's really short.
Roll theater.
Why are you saying that? That's stupid. Okay. Back.
But the water's running.
Shoot.
Your audio is so important. If you get any sounds going on, your audio, it's just not worth it.
Dear trolls, feel free to throw all the shade you want.
Shade.
We criticize everyone for their audio quality, and yes, there are pipes on the other side of our studio's wall, and water runs every 5 minutes or so. So just let us have it. I accept your criticism. All right. Welcome back, and let's dig in.
Let's. Corsican.
Of course I can.
This film is kind of a weird thing that the three of us have.
This is something we debate regularly, actually.
Yeah.
Because Taylor, this is like your style.
This is your wheelhouse.
Yeah, my will. Yes.
Your style. I mean, you like making expressionist, experimental films.
Yeah.
D is a designer of films, and the way we differentiated those things was, on one case, You're using film as your art form to express a feeling within you visually,
Right.
versus using film as a tool to communicate an idea to an audience.
Right.
Right? So one's on design, one's on expression. I really sort of straddle the line and change my mind on who I agree with more pretty regularly. So let's, with that context set, let's see what we can say about this film.
So I did appreciate the aesthetic of this film. I liked it. I liked the stark black. So it's black and white, but
Mostly black.
mostly
Yeah,
black.
very black.
And I really liked that. It felt like just everything's shrouded in this almost iris of darkness.
Like there was ink spilt on the video.
Like a
Yeah.
vignette.
Yeah, vignetted, but it's not always vignetted in the center. Sometimes it's vignetted kind of up in the corner with like just like texture going on. And I loved this kind of is it the words malevolent?
Mm-hmm.
This malevolent atmosphere of just kind of violence that's just kind of looming, and that kind
I'd
of
say that is a.
That's
I
interesting.
I think that is an emotion that I felt.
yeah.
Looming violence is that's a good couplet to describe this film.
Yeah,
Interesting, yeah.
And I really enjoyed that. So the score, the piano, it was driving me nuts. I could not.
And you've made some
yeah.
very abrasive soundscapes.
Yeah, so there's a difference between. I think you can deal with I love abrasive music and abrasive sounds and abrasive imagery, but it was just extremely repetitive. This piano, it's like Eyes Wide Shut does this do 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 do, and it's extremely eerie. But this movie does the same thing, but it feels like it's like a loop that he just kind of found, and then sometimes it wouldn't loop quite right, and I didn't feel like it fit the atmosphere of what was
Interesting.
going on, in my
Yeah.
opinion. So I wasn't a big fan of that. And other than that, I think some of the strangling scene with the chain didn't feel real enough. Like I could tell that it was just there; it wasn't being pulled,
Yeah.
especially because it was a close up.
There was no like indentation.
Yeah,
they
it
gave,
was just kinda
and there was
there.
one shot where there was slack in the chain, like you could see that it wasn't being pulled.
Right.
tight.
Yeah, and like I can understand that because you don't want to.
But it's expressionist. He might have meant that.
so that's where we get into it. Now we're getting into it.
Sorry, Taylor's camera.
That might have been part of his vision.
Sure.
Um,
I doubt it though.
all right, so
I doubt it too. Yeah.
I doubt it too. I enjoyed elements of this film. I like I like storytelling that it just sort of that just reveals itself in pieces that kind of feel fractured and
Yeah.
and so you end up putting together a story like a puzzle. And even if that story isn't very strong, you get to an end and you sort of understand what happened, and you had like a visceral experience that takes you from point A to point B. I don't feel like this film did that. I don't feel like we really went anywhere, but
Yep.
I think they wanted to. I do think they were trying to tell a story of a thing happening.
I think they were too.
And that's kind of where the expressionist side of this falls apart for me.
Yeah.
Because there's expressionism in I'm going to give you a bunch of imagery and sounds, the tones and feels of which are going to put you in a place of vulnerability or excitement. It's going to do something to you. That's one philosophy all by itself. But when you start weaving narrative threads in there, if you're not going to take me to point A to point B, then you've just distracted me from the thing you wanted me to feel.
Yeah.
And
Right.
I want one or the other.
Right.
You know, the most distracting thing to me in this was him continually using matches to illuminate things, because it felt like one of those things that a young filmmaker says, I love shooting things by firelight and this looks really cool. And you know what? The first shot that you used match light to show, I believe it was a picture in your hand, it was a super cool shot. That was awesome. By the time we've had 10 or 12 match lit shots, it just wasn't interesting anymore, and it had lost some of its drive. What do you think, D?
So believe it or not, I've made an expressionist film before. Called Earthquake.
Uh-huh.
I made it as an assignment for a film class in high school. And what I did, this is relevant, what I did in there was chose a bunch of movements and shots that I thought would lead up to an interesting thing where I could put it, because the assignment was to build something for a soundtrack. So I put everything that I would think in my mind would match up to the soundtrack somewhat. I felt like this film was very much picking shots that they thought would look interesting. And that was pretty much it. Like you said, I think there was some sort of story trying to be told here that did distract me from the surrealist aspect. There were like 2 shots in here that I was like, wow, that's a really cool shot. But that's all my mind can do. I can only look at it and be like, oh, that's interesting. And then I just kind of sit there and I don't feel like I'm engaged at all whatsoever. This is my personal thing. Like Kenny said, I'm a designer and I can't get on board too much with expressionist filmmaking. It's hard for me to get engaged past a certain aspect. That being said, like we've said before, Third and the Fifth is an expressionist film that I just adore, that I freaking love. And I don't know if it's a holistic aesthetic that's the problem, or if it's just a kind of aesthetic that I don't like. Because the Third and the Fifth I love, and I'm always there with it. I'm completely engaged with it, and I can't do that with other expressionist films, and I don't know why.
I think it's because it's so it's hard to just generalize. So like, I bet there's other expressionist films out there that exist that you would probably love as much as Third and the Fifth.
Yeah.
And it's called The Third and the Seventh.
Oh, Third and the Seventh.
Third and the Seventh. Fifth and sorry.
I just checked.
Third and the Seventh.
It's just all such an individual case by case thing.
Yeah.
Because like, I feel like for me, I can get to know what I do and don't like from films, but there are, like, I can't say that I like one genre over another genre, because within every genre,
there's always something different.
Like some of the best movies I've ever seen,
right?
You know,
right.
But so that's where I think you're falling into the Third and the Seventh, right?
Third and the Seventh.
Third and the Seventh is one that you just happen to love, and that's just kind of what it is. You know, I'm not sure if there is a deeper reason for that other than an instinctive, intuitive, just liking it.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, which kind of brings us to like why we keep sort of going round and round and round whenever a expressionist film comes up.
Yeah.
Is this idea that here we are film critiquers, right? We are here critiquing, trying to pick apart and dissect and learn from movies. But Dee's point has often been that if your point in making your film was just to express what you're feeling or your idea, then it's very hard for us to say if you expressed it
right,
yeah, correctly.
So right,
or
exactly.
If you could have expressed it better.
You could have expressed it better, right? So I'll tell you just what I got from the film. Okay, but from the very beginning, I had thought, okay, so it's black and white. I'm thinking this is a student film and this isn't done very well. And the reason why I was thinking that is because the shots themselves were shaky. They didn't look like they were pointing at anything very specific. They had some frames that were immediately very, poignant, I guess is what you would call it, where the lighter is like in the bottom third, right? Like that means something. But then we cut it and we kind of like crossfade to another shot of a specific lighter in a different area, and I'm just like, why is that there? It was mostly confusing for me. The parts where the guy was being killed, I couldn't connect with it. I didn't understand why he was being killed or why I should care. Also, I didn't feel any danger for it.
What if you were given a preface and told ahead of time we were about to watch an expressionist film? Would that have changed
No,
your
that's just
experience?
No, that's how I felt while watching it. It's just it never connected with me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that can happen.
Yeah, and I do feel like it's worth noting. I think that the reason I didn't quite get connected to this movie is because it had a little bit of identity crisis. One, are you an expressionist film trying to convey a tone or emotion, or two, are you trying to tell a specific story with a beginning, middle, and end in there somehow? Mm-hmm. And it felt like both, which just had, to me, one distracted from the other.
Yeah.
I really like the text messages. I thought it was really cool.
I like the text
I like
message
the sound for 'em.
sound.
Yeah.
Like the editing, the glitchy thing in the sound. That was cool.
Yeah. I had something to say.
Oh, he's pulling a D.
How embarrassing.
That's gonna be your thumbnail.
Okay, so yeah, I did overall enjoy this. I didn't love the there's a shot of they have the dude sitting down and they did like they did like a few layers of it, opacity, where there's like 3 of him like kind of like writhing around and like scratching his face.
Some of that was really fun, actually.
Yeah, so that didn't really do it for me.
Yeah.
And again, that's where I'm coming from, where like you know what you like and you know what you don't like. Just I feel like you can just get that instinctively, you know. And
you know what it might be, is like how you're talking about cliches before, how that you really don't like them. Maybe it's simplicity with me that I really don't like. Like there's an effect that everyone did when I first started doing editing classes, and that was layering all of your audio track, or making copies of your audio track over and over and over, and then layering them just a little bit before each other, so you had this giant echo. Everyone did it. Anyone who did a surrealist film did that. And anyone who did a surrealist film also did what you're talking about, the little opacity thing where they layered it and made it look like this guy is moving several times. It looks like it was made without a purpose. That's what I hated.
right, yeah,
Yeah, and I think the real difference between maybe I might be wrong here, but maybe the real difference between a good expressionist film and just a hodgepodge of clips that I don't understand is coming back to this central theme of intent.
Right.
I mean, every time you've made an expressionist film, you've always said, I wanted to do this.
Yeah.
I wanted to do this thing.
Yeah, and there's some things, like, even though your films are expressionist, I'm still able to connect with them, and I'm able to watch it and say, I see what you did here, I see what you did here, and I see what you did here. I can say that. There's maybe some shots that I don't connect with, but over the most part, I can tell that you had intent.
right,
Yeah.
I think in my opinion, I think you should always have an intent for something.
Yeah. Even if you think
actually,
something might be cool when you're doing it in post.
I don't know. I'm so, see, I think I'm a pretty hard believer in subjectivity in film.
Yeah.
I have a really hard time grappling with anything being objective.
Right.
You're wrong about that.
What do you mean? Like
You're
my belief is wrong?
I'm just being objective.
He's just being objective.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yes, keep going.
Other than the camera being on or off.
Yeah.
You know? Because, and it does relate back to intent, because you can have something intentionally be like Inland Empire by David Lynch is intentionally shot on standard definition digital video,
Right.
and it looks disgusting.
Yeah.
But it's a film that is about the like underbelly of of a city and all the disgusting things that go on in that situation. So
Right.
it makes sense, even though it's not like the nicest looking thing.
Well, so you
know?
have a purpose for it.
Exactly.
You
So
have
there,
a why.
there has to be the intent,
And
I think.
in tandem with the intent is the artistry.
Yeah.
It's that you're using your artistry to pull out, to convey your intent.
Yeah.
So-
right? Whether that be through an expressionist form or a more designed storytelling, you have to have those two sides.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even like a Stan Brakhage film, which is purely abstract.
Yeah.
There's still a idea behind it, and his idea for the form of his art is, I'm going to paint on each frame of film.
Yeah.
And draw these pictures, and he even like impresses like butterflies into some of his frames and stuff like that. He gets crazy with it. And there's still, even though it's completely abstract, it's Jackson Pollock,
Right. It's void of
abstract.
any kind of meaning.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's still an idea behind the film.
Right.
you know?
Well, and that's what's with a lot of Picasso paintings or Picasso lookalikes, is that even though they're painting to make it look like there's this figure that's completely distorted, they're not painting it to be distorted. They're painting it because whatever their intent was, and you can tell that it's all meant to be that way. And like we talked about with Incredibles 2, people have a way of sensing genuineness. You know, which is such a weird word.
Ingenuity. That's what you mean.
No, that's not what I mean. Yeah, but people have a way of sensing these things, and I really think it is that whole intent. This is my why. This is my reason. This is my purpose. And it could be experimentation. You know, experimentation could be your purpose as long as it is intended, and as long as you have the whole thing really commit to it. You know, that really is what it's about.
There's even another side of me though that says intent doesn't matter.
Well, okay, look at Jackson Pollock for a second.
That's an intent, by the way.
Jackson Pollock may not have intended, when he does his brushstrokes, to have the paint slide in this specific fashion, right? That shape may not have been intended, but the way in which he's painting is intended. So he's
The medium, the color choice, the canvas
right,
size.
Yeah.
right. He's intending a boundary, if you will. He's kind of he has a space, and he's intending his ideas to go to here, but he's not doing anything extra. You know, he didn't spill a bucket of paint on his thing and go, oh, you know what, and then takes his hands and go like that. Like, he doesn't do that because it's not.
Which is, I think, is why all the sort of copycats that have come along and said, like, well, that's not art. I could do that same thing. My 4-year-old could do that, and I could sell it for a fortune.
Exactly.
Never works.
Exactly, which is also why subjectivity is always really weird in that instance, because when you see a 4-year-old who's painted something like that, and you're not really connected with the artist, you're saying, oh yeah, that's a really good, that's from Monet. When if the thing is,
See, that's where I divert a little bit, where it's like, I think the end product is more important than, not necessarily more important. So I keep coming up. I have an example, and I keep coming back to. I have a leaning towards an answer of where I go for this idea, and it's this. There's a shot of, say, somebody is sitting down. He's looking out a window, and he's just really thinking really hard, and then we cut to city streets, and a motorcycle drives by, and it's like kind of a loud motorcycle. Regardless of what and say the filmmaker made this cut with a jarring motorcycle sound, but he made it not out of like, okay, now I'm gonna juxtapose his quietness with this loudness, but he made it because in the script it says, he's looking out the window, end scene, cut to city street.
right.
There's no there's not necessarily a intent to convey a piece of art or expression through that cut. But if you as an audience member are watching that and you see that and you get that out of it, does that make it, like, how, is that invalid because he didn't intend it to be that way?
I think you can read it, I think is what it is. that whole cut that you're talking about, like what's the proximity experiment?
I don't know. You had a word for it.
I can't remember what the thing was called. Yeah, but where you cut, like you said,
Quiet,
where you
loud.
cut from the face to the thing that they're looking at, right? And what's his name? What's the guy's name? This guy.
Chaz.
Chaz. Psycho.
Hitchcock.
Thank you.
Okay.
It was Hitchcock's experiment, and he said that cutting between these two cuts creates a conveyance of sorts, and I think if the person who is conveying that meaning, if he intended to convey meaning, then you can see it, and if he didn't, I don't think it comes across as clear.
I'm not sure about that.
Well, it's because we're human, so if you can't prove it,
Yeah.
because it's entirely subjective. But because we've used that specific technique throughout so long, and people are so used to it, and it's almost become a rule in filmmaking, we can tell that this thing does work. Therefore, we use it more often.
Yeah.
So
We also have, I mean, it's really hard to say where one person's creation begins and another one ends in the collaborative process that is making a movie.
yeah.
You know, in your description, I don't understand why that isn't intent from the editor.
Well, I think he just means
My example is hypothetically nobody intended that effect.
right.
in the
It's
making of.
it's just one shot followed by another. No one's intending. It just
But
exists.
the audience one person in the audience inferred this crazy, intense experience from it.
Right.
Does
Sure,
that make because it wasn't
maybe-
intended? Is
well,
it not valid to him?
Maybe great art could come by accident, but that art doesn't belong to anyone, and you can't replicate it.
And also,
I think you could.
Not by accident.
Well, I think you can, no. I think you can see. I think you can see that and be like, "Wow, that was really moving to me,"
Yeah.
and then take that and put it in yours.
Sure,
Absolutely,
which is
yeah.
your intent.
Yeah.
Now,
Yes, exactly. That's not what I'm not saying that. Then now I'm going to go do the same thing without that intent. I'm saying that just because an artist didn't intend it to be a certain way doesn't make it invalid or being able to.
It doesn't make the
inspire,
reading invalid at all. Yeah, the inspiration is.
I'm
totally
just saying on the
unique.
creative side, if you're trying to make something, your intent is completely what is going to drive the creation into something that's good.
Maybe.
It won't invalidate the reading.
I don't think there's any way about that. There's no maybe involved, because even if you decide you want to just sort of like follow chance and happenstance and the random events that occur in front of you as you passionately do some weird thing, right? Right? And it turns into something really great. That happened because you had a specific intent.
Sure.
That was your intent,
That's true,
and you
yeah.
executed it.
That's
Yeah.
true.
You know, so I don't know that there is
Something that's intentless.
you can't purposely achieve art by accident.
No, not purposely, but I think art can be achieved by accident, and I think art can still be good if it's achieved by accident.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
But you just can't plan for it, and you
Yeah.
can't.
I'm
make
not
it
saying
happen.
that.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that.
So why does it matter?
Because it's interesting.
No,
I
it's
guess
just interesting.
Yeah, I'll give you I'll give you a quarter for that one. Sure. Yeah, it's interesting. Anyway, Corsican.
Anyway,
Oh, right, that movie.
So,
I think.
sorry.
I think
I was
as
trying
a-
to cut you off.
It's great. Nice. There is a motorcycle on outside right now.
And our audio sucks today.
But this, as a amateur effort, this was ambitious and visually stimulating and interesting, and I think you should keep going and pushing yourself further and harder.
Yeah.
But really dial down and focus on what is it that you're really trying to do. This has been another short film roundup. Thank you for submitting your films. Not sorry if we hurt your feelings, and hope you found it helpful. And you can submit more films where?
r/Comline Studios, link in the description.
Link in the description.
Yeah, we welcome all forms of visual storytelling, or the absence of story through visuals. or the conveyance of your perception of a color,
Yeah.
or
exactly.
the emotion stirred in you at the sight of a crushed butterfly.
Yeah.
What have it, man? Just throw it our way. D will hate it.
Guaranteed.
All right. Thanks again, and until next time, I'm Kenny,
I'm D.
I'm Taylor.
and we'll see you at the talkies. You poured your drink on our mixer.
I did.